Hello everybody and welcome to the first video of Starcraft History. This video series is going to cover both Starcraft 2 and Brood War, and cover the famous moments, metas, anything really that has to do with the history of Starcraft that I think is worthwhile in teaching and remembering and making fun of, to be honest. Enjoy. For our first lesson, let's go way back in time and look at the beginnings of Starcraft 2. What you're looking at right now is a video from Blizzcon 2010, so the first year that StarCraft 2 was released. If you've watched any StarCraft 2 lately, you might be wondering, what the hell, what's with the default overlay? This was the only overlay you had, and on top of that, you had to get graphics for your sponsors and your teams and whatnot, that also took in mind all this space, so you were usually given even less space to actually see the game. It was pretty bad. If you're lucky, the Observer knew how to get rid of this, but that was really, really fancy, and not a lot of people remembered those controls. Most of the time, you were stuck with this, the menu, message log, everyone thing, all of it. Now, the second thing you might notice is, what the hell is this map? This is Scrap Station, and it's a map you'll hear commentators nowadays say, what's that terrible map that was a U-shape and had a gold at the bottom? Scrap Station? Oh yeah, that was awful. It's a really good thing we had really good casters to cover up the ugliness of observing. I mean, look how young these guys are. That's Day 9, Artosis, and Tasteless 7 years ago. Look how far casting has come, too. I mean, if casters nowadays wore t-shirts, they'd just be called unprofessional. Joking aside, let's look at another example of early StarCraft 2. Here's the GSL Finals, with some very throwback names. Fruit Dealer was the original god of Zerg. Nasty, that came later. And Hope Torture, well, he's more commonly known as Rainbow nowadays. But Hope Torture, I guess, was just such a cooler name, right? Sure. Anyways, look at this production tab. I mean, what is this? It's so ugly and unrefined, and oh god, that's the siege mode upgrade right there. Once upon a time, Terrans had to upgrade their tanks to have siege mode. There's actually a ton of timings that revolved around hitting before that siege mode was done, and a lot of games could be lost in your own play if you were just 5 seconds late to that siege mode. It was kind of difficult and made holding the early all-ins, not impossible, but certainly more difficult, which is why you had such weird-looking games that were on one base for a long time. Also notice how Hope Torture, or Rainbow, still is on one base, with his natural command center right up against his main command center. He wasn't bad, guys. He is the GSL finalist right now, as we're watching this video, so pretty good, back in the day. But this is just the way that you played, he's even getting a one-base Thor, for God's sakes. This is just what you did, and it wasn't too out of the ordinary because, well, everything was kind of a go back in the wild, wild west days of 2010 StarCraft 2. What Fruit Dealer is doing is 2-base, as Zerg did still expand typically, but, God forbid, 3rd base is coming into play. That was a little bit later. And 2-base Spire was kind of the only way to go, really. It's not an unheard of build, even nowadays in Legacy of the Void, and it was very popular, in fact, with Heart of the Swarm, but in Wings of Liberty, this was the way to go. There is a lot of abusable maps that you needed to deal with tanks, and just that pressure they provided really marked great actually Zerg player, which Fruit Dealer was. He was one of the only guys that could defeat Terran at that time, because Terran was considered to be pretty overpowered back at that time, and I'm sure people will argue about other points in time where Terran has been overpowered, but certainly in the first season of the GSL. Alright, so we talked a lot about the Korean scene in 2010. Let's look towards the foreign scene in 2010. So, quick overview for those who really don't know anything about StarCraft 2. Foreigner is anyone who's not a Korean. Maybe I'll do another video about why that is, but not today. So this is an MLG in 2010. I'm not sure which MLG, but you can see that people have started experimenting with new ways to have an overlay. They still are constrained to the default overlay, although the production does look a little bit nicer, the production tab that is, and they have a bit better of a scoreboard, and they finally learned that maybe including a webcam would be a worthwhile use of space, which it definitely was. The map you're currently looking at is Xel'Naga Caverns, which is another one of those oldie but not goodie maps we had in 2010, and maybe even longer than that. But yeah, it's Xel'Naga Caverns, and you might have played this if you were around for the Dream Pool a couple of years ago, but otherwise you would, hopefully never have been subjected to playing on this. It had a tasteless secret hallway off to the far left and the far right, which is kind of cool, and otherwise just like a really short map with golds in the middle. It's another map basically where people were like, what was that terrible map back in 2010? And they'll say Zelda Caverns and everyone will have a good laugh. I want to take a second here and just really drive home how much better overlays have become. MLG, GSL, and today's GameHeart. GameHeart is so beautiful in comparison, and in general is actually a very good overlay in my opinion for esports. But you know what isn't? The WCS overlay. It's okay, it's better, right? But GameHeart's number one always. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any suggestions, please leave them down below, and please check out my other videos.